Good afternoon. It's pretty interesting, the debate that was introduced right now, the getting humanity close to strong design. And I will try to expose you that through several projects that we develop in Brussels, the capital of Europe, it happens. Just let me first present you a few works that I worked on with my office that I initiated more than 20 years ago. This is a public space that was initiated by a group of skaters. These skaters were supported by a cultural centrum. The cultural centrum was supported by good politicians and a good administration. The meaning of this space was, of course, to promote the art of skating, but also to allow other people than skaters to use this space. Another project is a cultural centrum which houses an auditorium of 500 seats, for which we propose to double it by an outside auditorium so that the public uses of the public spaces could be, in some kind of a way, scenography. This is an artist housing and working place project that was meant to be done in an existing building. The existing building was too short for so many housing, so we proposed to destroy part of it and build a new one so that there could be a discussion between the old and the new project. This is a photography museum for which we insisted on the relation between outside and inside spaces so that the people experimenting the exhibition, the photography exhibition, could have through the windows, but also through the different spaces outside, an other view and other understanding of what photography could be. And at least this is an ice skating, Olympic ice skating project that we drew as some kind of a huge refrigerator because of isolation topics. And through the skin of this refrigerator, we organized some kind of a specific type of views. What is the link, or what are the links between all these projects? It's processes. We insist in our office on good process, trying to bring architecture project up to the level of social, political, and cultural results. But I won't tell you too much about my personal office because, as it was said before, I accepted a mission of 5 years as head architect of Brussels. To make you understand a little bit of this mission, maybe I have to explain you a little bit the context of this, of the existing Brussels capital region. The context is about history. You heard this morning that we have a queen and a king, and Leopold II was our second king, and he had a very great vision about Brussels to become a great capital. Out of this vision, he had several projects through which one of these was the North-South Railroad Station junction. But the result of this vision was this: more than 50 years cutting through the city and separating the upper and the lower part of the city. Another important event was the Universal Exhibition in 1958, for which highways were organized through the cities also to allow people from outside the city to come as quick as possible by their own way to see the exhibition, but also to use the city for themselves. These projects were organized and set up with this type of modernistic vision that you are experimenting here in Hong Kong, with the segregation of the public spaces on the lower level for cars, trucks, and so forth, on the upper level for pedestrians. But then the result of this type of vision, the result of such vision and processes are these, so that around the year 70s, a lot of riots and protests were organized by the inhabitants to say, don't touch to my city, I want to live in. So since Brussels has become a region since 1989, different tools were set up to help policies on urban fabric. The first tool was this policy of district contracts concentrated on the poor areas of the city. The poorest areas are very close to the center. You can see this is the heart of Brussels, quite the center of Brussels, of the capital is right there. So the poorest areas are very close to the center of the city, but they are along the canal and also the railroad tracks. This policy was based on a very strong participation process to allow the people to bring ideas for the programs, and it stimulated also new practices for architects and graphic designers to go towards the inhabitants and not expecting the inhabitants to go towards the architect. The idea of that is to make sure that ideas and suggestions by inhabitants could be respected through the whole process of developing the project. So this type of programs are some kind of more than $20 million HK dollars in small areas, developing housing, equipment, and public spaces programs that could be complementary in a small scale. The issues of that was to reinforce the existing fabric of the city, also to invent new typologies of housing, of equipment in some specific and quite hybrid situation, and also create some new public spaces so that the inhabitants could use them. But now, since 4 years, I've become the head architect of Brussels, and we see our mission, because I have a team of 5 people, we see our mission like some kind of a go-between tool between different actors. On the left part, you see the politicians. Our mission is depending of 5 ministers. On the left part, in black, you see the administration. We are using them to get all the information needed for the processes. On the right part, you see the actors. It means the carrier of the project, which can be regional, local, or also private carriers. The result of our work is meant to improve the professional working processes and also to make sure that the public, the large public, could be positively influenced by the results of that. After 4 years, we have been working on more than 140 projects on the Brussels region, and you don't see it too much, but this is the map of Brussels by the level lines, and we like to say or interpret our work like acupuncture points, and it means that all the projects are linked together, are depending of different actors, and I will talk a little bit about that. So what is important for the introduction, the question was, is it a different attitude of uncontextual or contextual architecture, we insist about the fact that an architecture is laying on a site linked with complex institutional, private, and public interplays, depending on programmation for the users, but also for the habitants close to the project, depending on the process and depending also on the technical data linked to the place. I insist about the fact that the process must be as much as possible completed. As you see here on the left part, it's some kind of an ideal figure of a process from the program to the project development. And on the right part, you see different projects that we developed, and you can see that we have experimented on continuous processes. And I will a little bit later explain about, give you some example about that. What we insist also about is the links between the different actors. These can be local, regional, private or federal actors. And the networks that are organized between all these actors are very important on different steps of the process. So for us, a figure of a project is seemingly represented by, on the left part, the continuity of the process, and on the right part, the activation of the links between the different actors. Also, for a process, there are different steps. I won't go too much in details, but what is important is for you as architect to understand the procedure we try to get through to allow young architects or experimented architects to get to the contract. It means that we go from the program, we choose a procedure in 2 phases, which allows a committee to give a selection of architects. Usually we receive 50 to 60 candidates, and we have to select 3 to 5 teams to give their proposition within a competition. And finally, with another committee, we organize the advisory committee to allow the final contract award. Through all these steps of a process, what is important is to agree about the different criteria for the architecture quality. These are good programs, good procedure, and good committees, as I said before, but also the way you create or propose the program, and also analyze the result of the competition. These 3 criteria are urbanity, which means the relation between the project and its context. And we see that not only on the impact that the project can have on its environment, but mostly on the plus-value, the overvalue that the project can bring to its environment. Habitability means the comfort, the well-being for the users, but also for the habitants around the project. And the technical means all the problems that you have to solve as architect, from the technical building problems to the budget problems. All these criteria are crossed also with the sustainability debate criteria, which I won't go into detail, but I guess you know about these. And finally, it makes some kind of an integrated process or way of thinking about the quality of a project. The scale of the project that we have been working on is quite different. This is a huge program of more than 240,000 square meters that should be developed in the north part of Brussels. And this is a very small project, 600 square meters. So you understand that the scale is not the most important criteria for us. The most important criteria is the processes that we can go through to allow good projects, architecture project. And to make you understand the link between these different projects, I will go into detail of several of them. 3 that are close to each other. The first one is Ecopole. It's some kind of a incubator for companies that are linked with the reuse of used materials and trashes. The idea was to restore an existing factory, and what we insisted on was the fact that the new place should have a double face, one oriented towards the city, towards the streets on the upper level, and another face towards the canal, so that it can positively influence the way that people can experiment the canal, which was not used before for years. For this project, the process was pretty much continuous and a very qualified type of process. Another place is Southport. It is some kind of a place like you will have in MPCs. It's some kind of a hosting of startups, design, architecture, model of startups. But the meaning is also to allow public to go inside of this incubator to make so that public, outside public and local public can be stimulated about and through all this new startup production. For this project also the process was quite continuous and almost completed. The third one is the Slachthaus, the place where you kill animals to be eaten. They were working on a master plan, and what we insisted on was to allow and reinforce the continuity between the public spaces inside the master plan and outside along the canal, so that there could be more use created by this continuity. Nowadays, the work has been started by the first phase of this master plan, which is a marketplace. For this process, we just got into the work at the end because the architect was already chosen. Another project which shall be very important is also an incubator for companies dealing with materials, ecological materials for buildings. And we choose this project because it reinforced the relation between the inside and the outside spaces, creating public spaces that allow the future inhabitants around this area to go through the place and almost visit the companies that will be working on this place. For this project also, the process was pretty much continuous. Another project which is quite important, it's some kind of a hosting square, we say. It's important because of the continuity also, again, between public spaces and the inner programs, which are housing programs, commercial programs on the ground floor, and equipment programs on the first floor. So this is some kind of a new way of thinking. While the modernity was imposing the segregation of functions, nowadays the cities try to reinforce mixity of function. And for this project, the process was pretty much continuous. And finally, this project will be one of the most symbolically important project in Brussels, because it's the place, the central place of the European institution in Brussels. The idea was to say that there should be an important connection between upper ground and underground spaces, because underground there is a very large, a very huge mobility connection place between, there is a metro station, 2 train stations, and 2 highways that are crossing underground. So we insisted quite a lot about the connection between upper ground and underground. And the author, Xavier de Gator, the author proposed on this area to create some kind of a place that could host different types of events, so that he could say that this place could become the real public forum for Europe. And for this project also the process was almost completed. So you can, when you compare all the processes, you can see that there are differences, but the best projects are depending on the most continuous processes that we can develop. And then I will end with the one other part of our mission, which is art in the public spaces. In fact, it's a little part of a mission, but an important one because it's quite meaningful. And we are supposed to become an information point for regional and communal, which means local authorities, for art in the public space. And as architect, I say, I'm not a specialist about art. So what we created was, on one side, to develop as good processes as possible that you can compare with the processes that we develop for architecture and landscape project. But also, we called for experts on art to help us to give and take the good decision. On the left, you see some kind of one part of the procedure that could call and choose immediately the artist. And on the right, you see different artists that we compare to each other, which is uneasy to do, because it's not easy to compare the practice of artists. So for different projects, we used mostly the left type of process. Like for this one, close to the future place of Europe, we called Lot van Oudenaarde, who had done very good lighting project to improve the quality of this tunnel. And then for this project, we choose immediately Philippe van Sneek, who is very well known for his painting qualities. And this could become probably the largest painting in the public spaces, because this facade is 140 meters long and 8 meters high, so it can become a very huge painting event, I would say. And then I will end my little lecture with this picture that was published in the media. The container that you see on its corner is an artwork by Luc Deleu, and we really appreciated to work with him in a whole festival, art festival. And what I try to symbolically say with this picture is to say that when you bring improvement and quality in public spaces, people can use it, and you can see that with this riot. I thank you for your attention.